I decided to do this event because since Tuesday night, I've encountered so many people who are scared about the state of our world. So tonight is going to be about keeping safe, thriving, and lifting the world at the same time. So we're going to do some spiritual work together tonight, but I want to talk a little bit first. Since about 2014, about a decade ago, in my teaching and my writing, I've been putting forth my crazy idea that approximately 7 to 8 years, we're seeing a collective, pivotal turning point, bringing crises and/or breakthroughs that change humanity. And I didn't come up with this randomly. If you read my last book, The Breakthrough Point, you'll see there's a formulation and an exactness to this timing. I'm not going to explain it here because that would just take up way too much time. But by my formulation, I suggested that 2016 would be a particularly pivotal point. And I predicted that once we hit 2016, life was going to become increasingly extreme in unprecedented ways. And this is all a result of an evolutionary shift that humanity is in the midst of right now, where everything old is falling apart, just as a lot of new things are coming together. And we're moving from a hierarchical, patriarchal system of power where everyone has a place on a vertical ladder to an egalitarian form of power that's much more from the ground up. And the extreme nature of the times is the result of an escalating contest between these unifying forces of evolution and the counter forces of old, divisive, hierarchical power struggles, kind of a last gasp effort. And all that's falling apart, of course, tends to be a lot more disruptive and in our faces than all that's coming together. Although what has come together in the last 20 years or so has changed us just as fundamentally. There's a whole new operating model in place that's already become quite well established, and it's fueled by the unlimited power we have when we all join collaboratively rather than competitively. It requires small efforts contributed by masses and masses of us into an organizing infrastructure. And this might sound, kind of theoretical and idealistic, yet it's happening all around us. It's become so ever-present that it's become quite ubiquitous. I mean, something as commonplace as crowdsourcing, which is a term that didn't even enter our vocabulary until this century, is an example of that. Or internet sources, the internet, period. Internet sources that allow authors to publish and sell their own books, or musicians to publish their own work without the intermediary of a conventional publishing company or music company. Those are other examples, but they're just a few. There's many, many examples of this new model now in play and changing our lives just very dramatically. And in my last book, The Breakthrough Point, I charted a lot of them. I went into a lot of detail, making a case for why I think these crazy things. Check it out. It's not just me being really woo-woo and out there and like, oh, the guides told me. No. I looked at the real world, came up with a lot of real world examples of these time frames and this new model. So check it out if you're curious. And As the power of collaboration becomes more and more pronounced, so do the counter forces of old structures that are striving even harder to organize power at the top, among the few rather than distributing it among many. And I'm not going to do a big explanation of this now. As I said, if you're curious, check out the book. But in the book that I was writing all through 2015, I pretty much finished in 2016, right before the election, assuming Hillary Clinton was going to win. Such an optimist I am. I had to write a little postscript. In the book, I deliberately didn't cite the exact date of when the next stress point would be, because I didn't want people putting a lot of intention into that date. But by the system I proposed, it falls now, right around this election. Funny how these stress points, by an exact formulation, fell around the 2016 election, now around the 2024 election. And the significance of this particular pivotal point would be, by my formulations, my predictions, would be to test the strength of what we set in motion in 2016 and whether we've gotten stronger or weaker from these choices, from all of our decisions and the way we've collectively moved. But when I first started talking about this and predicting all these things, I didn't know if I was pulling it from my intuition or from some other crazy place. I had no idea then what we were all in for just a few years later. Pandemics, escalating environmental disaster happening all over the place, crazy politics. And we live in such a globalized world. We're all more connected to one another than we've ever been. Our individual destinies and the collective experience of the world are becoming increasingly intertwined. Even if we never watch the news, even if we feel that we really aren't affected by world events, we really can't avoid the whole vibration of change. It's the atmospheric soup we've all been swimming in. And times of great change where everything feels so unprecedented just can't help but being tumultuous and frightening. Think of this evolutionary shift as being like this great big giant wave that has the power to suck us under and then tumble us around or, God forbid, kill us. Think of a pandemic. I mean, that took out millions of people from the planet very quickly. Or alternately, and this is what I want to talk about tonight, if we use our spiritual skills, we can ride the wave. We can allow it to lift us and carry us into our own highest evolutionary path with tremendous speed and ease. Now, the good news of living in times of evolutionary transformation is that we really can use this energy to fast track our own personal success and well-being and thriving. We're going to do some spiritual work to call that in for each of us and the world in this event. But developmental biologist Bruce Lipton, he wrote this groundbreaking book, Biology of Belief, where he busted the whole Darwinian theory of survival of the fittest, which is basically a myth that we've been collectively living in and entrenched in for quite a long time. It's the idea that the strongest survive on the backs of all the rest. And the story portrays all living creatures as these separate individual entities struggling in competition with each other. But this Darwinian view of life is actually proving to be a false one. In Biology of Belief, an earlier book, Lipton broke new ground in his field by making the case that genes and DNA can actually be manipulated by belief, can be affected by consciousness. So tonight we're going to use consciousness. He proved this. He's a scientist. He did some research. Now, in his next book, Spontaneous Evolution, he challenged the very assumptions of Darwinism, saying, I'm quoting here, what we failed to realize is that the real evolutionary principle is thrival of the fittest. Those organisms that best fit the environment by contributing and supporting global harmony get to thrive while others, well, ... I quote him, end quote there. And he goes on to say, quoting again, paradoxically, this new level of cooperative awareness means maximum expression for the individual and maximum benefit for the whole, end quote. In other words, win-win is not just a survival mechanism, it's how we all thrive. And it's how we all also survive. In other words, in order for our species to survive, we need to abandon old survival strategies and aim higher. We have to learn how to thrive and how to thrive together. But it's easy to feel hopeless and powerless in our ability to move the needle when the world seems to be falling down around us, you know. I know, I get it. Still, I have personally seen things change remarkably in the direction of my higher intentions when I've remembered to use my spiritual skills. And what I want to talk about tonight is how, as a single, vulnerable little organism, we can find the power to be safe and to thrive, even when we feel in the midst of a chaotic world moving in the opposite direction. And not only thrive, but raise up the world around us at the same time. As I said, we're going to do some spiritual work here, but I want to introduce it with a story from my own life of when I was feeling quite weighed down by the heaviness of the world. It was during the height of the pandemic. It was the summer of 2020. It was before vaccines were available, and it was right after the murder of George Floyd. You all remember that? It really just got the Black Lives Matter movement going. And a few days before that event, I found my inner guidance to be very clearly telling me I was safe. And at the time, I thought, well, sure, this is related to that ever-present scariness of coronavirus. And the way I heard that guidance, the way it came through, was of just having this deep feeling of peace and well-being, and just the thought in my head that everything was going to be fine. I questioned my inner guidance and said, are you telling me I'm safe? Because I don't know about you, but I personally always question my inner guidance. Who knows, am I being psychic or psychotic? I don't know, I get those confused, I don't know. And at that point, I just immediately saw my first of the season beautiful monarch butterfly, a really big one, flit by. Now, I lived in Minneapolis. June, you know, it was Still kind of early for monarchs where I lived. And butterflies are special to me. My first book is called Holding a Butterfly, and it's kind of a metaphor for how to manifest a miracle. So, okay, I got it. Okay, thanks, inner guidance, I get it. I'm safe. Then, as I said, in the next few days, George Floyd was killed, and all hell broke loose. Very close to where I lived at the time. I'm in Florida now, but back then, I lived really close to the George Floyd event epicenter, and where the rioting first broke out. And my high vibrational feeling of safety, it did carry me through the first night of watching CNN and seeing the police precinct really close to my house being burned down. And the next night, it all got much closer to home, and I just was watching it all live on CNN. There were fires blazing, buildings burning just blocks away. I started to lose that, safe feeling. And my husband and I sat glued to the TV. He was totally freaked. He was not so comforted by me saying, "It's okay, honey. I saw a butterfly fly by me a few days ago, so I know it's going to be okay." He'd just be like, "Oh, that's her again." And I'm starting to think, well, okay, isn't this maybe the appropriate time to be really freaked out? I'm watching my post office burn and my bank burn on national television, just blocks from my house. I'm smelling the smoke. I'm hearing the sirens, no police presence anywhere. Isn't this when the sound of helicopters flying over my house and smoke filling our windows, we have to shut everything down? Isn't that when it, doesn't that maybe take priority over that little inner experience of my inner guidance? But that is when my inner guidance got really loud. And it said to me for the first time, "Lynn, use your skills." Okay, I heard that. And starting then and there, as the Twin Cities was just burning out of control, I used my skills. Said, okay, I'm a spiritual person, I'm a spiritual teacher. And my first thought was, okay, I send light and love to it, because that's what we light workers do, right? Light, love, like fairy dust, like, yeah. But my inner guidance said no, and started showing me very specific things to do with my mind. First, make my neighborhood invisible. Create an impermeable curtain along the main street that separated the rioting and my blocks. And I saw it like the train station to Hogwarts, where the entry was totally invisible to Muggles. And I got the guidance. I instructed my husband to turn on our porch light, but to turn off a few of the little decorative twinkle lights we have going at night. And above all, I was instructed to trust the safe feeling. Do not soak up anyone else's fear. Now, up to this point, national news coverage and the newscasters were all aghast that there was no police present. No presence, no fire department, no presence in this really riotous area. They were looking a little nervous. But about 20 minutes after I got that guidance to use your skills, along came this row of 350 National Guard troops. And they were just marching in really close file, one in front of the other. And then they turned to face the rioting area in a literal curtain. They stopped almost like they were like elbow to elbow, exactly where I envisioned this invisible curtain. And they just stood there between the riots, the fires, and my neighborhood. And very quickly, the crowds just dispersed. No one was hurt. Now, over the next few days, this went on for a while. I kept turning my attention inward, and I would get nudged in all kinds of ways to use my mind, my imagination, my intention in very specific ways to shift immediate dangers for myself and for my community and raise the vibration toward the higher good. And each time I got even a small bit of guidance and I gave just a little bit of attention and intention to this, I would see some kind of obvious positive shift, because I was watching it all on TV in startlingly literal and serendipitous ways. And there were so many, I don't have time to go through them all here, but they gave my husband and I chills in how literally my visioning kept manifesting. Now, on one day, I felt guided to raise the vibration of a house right across the street from us that always had this little bit of a creepy, scary Satan lives here vibe. You know, it was decorated with skulls and animal bones, and the yard was full of kind of garbage and I don't know what. And during this period, there were rumors of outside agitators from outer states, from other states, outer space. No, they were from the United States, who were instigating and escalating rioting. And in fact, we kept seeing these white vans roaming around our neighborhood with no license plates. It just looked really creepy, scary. And I mean, and as it turned out, you know, there were some of these folks were arrested much later on. They were members of the Boogaloo Boys, a white supremacist group who just talked about after George Floyd's death to come meet up in Minneapolis, and you know, their agenda was to start a race war. And my thinking was, my little judgy mind, if anyone was going to be in with the agitators, it would have to be the House of Satan guys. You know, it would have to be them. So I was just raising the vibration of that house, just putting a lot of, you know, love vibes into it. And we'll talk about how to do that. I was also guided to energetically close the entry to my block, my specific block. Now, just a little bit later after I did this, the really scariest Satan lived here guy, actually before that, one of the less scary Satan lives here guys, I heard a lawnmower going, and I looked, and there he was mowing his lawn, looking like, you know, the responsible suburbanite. This is like the heart of the city, you know, and I thought, wow, I've never seen that before. They are cleaning up their yard. And a little bit later, the really scary Satan lives here guy, he somehow found highway barrels, giant ones, you know, big ones, and rolled them to the entrance of our street so no cars could pass, right where I closed off the entrance. So, you know, it shows what my judgy mind will do, you know, a little lesson about making assumptions about people. I loved them all after that, even though they would never make eye contact with me if I ever said hello to them. I don't care. I loved them. But the next day, you know, the barrels were gone, and it was still pretty scary around the cities. And there was a time, you know, we were outside, and we saw this line of military vehicles very ominously making their way down our street. They looked like they were going to drive right in front of us, and they were big. I don't know if they were exactly tanks, but they kind of had the feeling of being tanks, not just little Jeeps, tanks. And we just didn't even want them to drive by us. It just felt so violating, and we were like, oh God, here they come. Because our house, our street where our house was the quickest route to the main drag that would be much more suitable to all these tank-like vehicles. But they came to the end of our block that I've closed off energetically, even though there were no barrels anymore. And they made a swift left turn down another little neighborhood street. Like, I don't know why. I don't know why. But we just breathed a sigh of relief. We just didn't want to have to watch them. And at another point, this is toward one of the last days of the weekend, I was simply guided to hold the intention for no loss of life. No loss of life. And a bit later that day, not too long after this, I turned on CNN, my favorite pastime, only to see a huge oil tanker barreling onto the highway into a crowd of demonstrators who'd taken over the street. And the vehicle slowed. He was stopped. A lot of protesters just crowded around the cab. And commentators watching were calling this miraculous, that no one was killed or seriously injured. And even the driver was saved from the angry crowd who were beginning to mob the cab, because a group of protesters got between the angry mob and the cab and helped get him out and escorted him to safety. And he wasn't trying to do anything. He was lost. He was lost. I think he got on the entry. He got on an exit ramp. So he was going the wrong way on the highway. So if the protesters hadn't been there, he could have been killed and could have resulted in a god-awful collision. So, okay, little miracle, yay. And a big part of this is once I started using my skills, I felt peaceful and safe through that whole weekend. And a few days later, I was guided to once again use my skills to raise the vibration of the White House. It was very specific. It wasn't about targeting a person. It was just about raising the vibration of the White House, non-specifically. Did that, I think, in the afternoon or evening. The next morning, I woke to news of beautiful golden letters painted down 16th Street, right in front of the White House, saying, "Black Lives Matter." I like that. That worked for me. So here is the big question. Is this all delusional, magical thinking? Am I crazy, psychotic lady? Or am I just a little bit, psychic using my skills? I don't know. That's for you to decide. And I'm not asking you to believe me. What I'm going to put forward is a little experiment. You don't even have to believe in it so much as just be willing to imagine in it and see what happens. And just, here's a little post note. Here's a story of what happened shortly thereafter when I let my vibration sink into the muck. It was immediately following that weekend of rioting. I had spent several days with my mind poised and at attention, while my husband had spent his days poised in his way with a hose and fire extinguisher on the front porch waiting for a Molotov cocktail to come our way. We were both very poised, at attention. And when relative peace was restored, we just sat side by side in the yard, emotionally exhausted. And of course, we then promptly got into a really stupid fight over nothing. and went to bed mad, as you do when your vibration has sunk into the muck. And I woke up in a deep funk the next morning. And in nowhere near a high vibrational state, I was checking email and just stupidly opened an email attachment that I instantly knew I shouldn't have, which meant Bill had to spend the next 2 days dealing with a virus, during which time he got phished, which he beat himself up over. And he then had to change every password. He being my tech support. He's in the other room being tech support as we speak. And after all that, he just wandered dejected, just in total dejection into the living room, feeling that he had been thoroughly battered by technology. And I just really got it. You know, my inner guidance was whispering, not so quietly, that just how raising my vibration over the last few days had given me immediate results. I was being shown what happens when I let myself just go down and wallow about in the muck of self-pitying misery and negative thoughts. And I just looked at poor Bill and I said, could we just agree to keep our vibration high together? And he just said, yeah. There's no plan. We formulated no practice. We just had that really simple agreement, like, yeah. And somehow, without even doing anything, we just started falling more and more in love with each other. We started having this blissful life in spite of the crazy happening all around us. That COVID era truly was quite magical for us. This is kind of where I'm going with, we can thrive even when there's a lot going on around us, and we can help raise other people up with us. We had an amazing year. In fact, it was the year that we found that we were able to move to Florida. All kinds of things fell into place in very magical ways to enable our move. And, you know, every night when we sit together and we're both finished work, we might have a beverage of one sort or another, and we go, clink, we have a blessed life. This is what I'm talking about, using our skills. Using our skills. Now, I've been a spiritual teacher of one sort or another for the last 50 years. See, I am very old. I'm really, really old. See, there's a lot of lighting. You don't see all my wrinkles. But I'm really old. So I think of someone who does use my skills. But the voice I was hearing at that time, as I said, it wasn't that quiet whisper. It was big, it was loud, it was even a little bit rude. You know, it was like, use your skills, Lynn. They might have like cursed a little bit. I won't go there. That's my guidance, not yours. It was calling for something more. And any of us who have meditated or prayed or practiced any kind of exercise using the power of your consciousness, you also have skills. And of course, those of us who are drawn to consciousness-based practices are often the same ones who most feel the weight, not just of our own lives, but of the world. We're the ones who feel like we just suck it all in and carry it on our shoulders. But as I listened to my screaming, cursing inner guidance, it basically let me know that carrying the emotional burdens of the world's woes, or even going into a funk over my own minor woes, is a luxury that I and none of us with skills can afford in these extreme times. We can't afford them. We can't afford them. It not only makes us miserable, it makes us useless, and it makes us vulnerable to letting those big waves of transformational change pummel us rather than lift us. More than ever before, it is time to use our skills. And that's why we've spent all those hours in meditation or prayer or classes over the years. We thought we were working on ourselves, and of course we were, but really we were preparing for now. There's no coincidence, it's not random that those of us with spiritual skills have chosen to incarnate now. We've been preparing for this, and we're going to do an exercise in using our skills in the very specific way I was guided to. And there's nothing I can do that any of you can't do. And in fact, when we hold intention together, we have the amplifying power of group energy as well. If you'd like to know more about that, I recommend 2 different books. Lynn McTaggart, the science writer, an excellent writer. You might have heard of her. She's a best-selling author. She writes about the power of consciousness, the science of it, in very interesting, readable terms, citing all the latest cutting-edge research. And over the years, over the books that she wrote, she actually became a researcher herself. And the book I recommend on this is The Power of 8, where she experiments herself with small groups of people working together and notes the amplifying effect and talks about it. And at first she doesn't really understand it. I know, as a clinician who's been doing this for, as I said, 50 years or so, I know that things are more powerful in a group. Oh, the other book I was going to mention, mine, The Breakthrough Point, A Spiritual Activist Guide to Thriving in a Modern World. It talks about how, from a clinician's perspective, group energy is powerful, and it gives a lot of how-tos. We're going to go into one of the how-tos here in a moment. And you don't even need to believe in what we're doing. You just need to let yourself imagine. And there's the benefit of doing this together is that group energy creates a stream, a river, that lifts all boats, across space, across time even. So what comes of this may really surprise you, even if you start out skeptical. So, okay, you ready? Let's do it. Let's change our lives and change the world. So I suggest getting comfortable for this. Just relax. Get to where, you feel pretty good. And just let your body relax, let your mind go into an open, quiet place. And first, give some attention to something that you would like to shift for the better in your own life. Something personal, something you'd like to call forth, something you're excited about, something you'd like to heal. Perhaps an obstacle you'd like to overcome. Something you'd like to see shift from your own life. We'll get to the world. Start with you. something that relates to you living your thriving life. Maybe it simply relates to feeling safe in a scary world. See what feels the most important. And close your eyes. If they're not already, just let your attention go in. This is where you go deep. Let your body and your mind start to go deeper with some deep, full breaths. Inhaling deeply. Exhaling just as deeply. And let your whole sense of yourself, your sense of identification, let it start to shift a bit from the density, that carved in stone limitation of your physicality, of matter, to something that is more about energy. You might want to, this is where you use your imagination, picture the cells that make up your physical body actually becoming very bright with light and pure energy. And imagine those cells that make up you, those tiny little particles, all starting to vibrate in beautiful, clear, light energy. And they're starting to spread apart. So you're no longer contained within the boundary of your physical body. And you can start to see now all the tiny particles that make up the cells, the molecules, the atoms, the subatomic particles, all filling with light energy and vibrating in that energy, pulsing this beautiful radiating way. And imagine all those particles spreading out. So you're becoming something very wave-like. The space in between all these tiny particles now is also filling with light, joining all the particles together into one beautiful fluid wave of energy. And this light is the divine light of love, the divine spark within all of us. And as you leave the density of matter behind, you enter a realm of unlimited possibilities, where time and space and natural law, they don't work here. They have no bearing. All of these things become very fluid. And you don't have to believe this. Just imagine that somehow you have left the rules of reality as you thought of them, like outside the room. It's just outside. You put them aside for now. And you're just imagining what it would feel like if those rules no longer apply. And as we go into this more fluid state, imagine many, many others across space and across time even, joining you in this experience, in this experiment. All of us vibrating together in light, in the light of divine love. And take a moment to just open your heart to these others, sight unseen, all of us bringing only our highest and best to this particular gathering, to this party. We only bring our best. And imagine saying as authentically as you can to all of these anonymous, sight unseen others, I'm here and I care about you. I love you, be well. I lift you so that together we thrive. I love you. I care about you. I'm here. I'm here for you. And just know that this power of all of us together is so much greater than we could ever muster separately. There's something exponential about it. You don't have to believe that. Just imagine how it would feel if you did. And you could feel right now a huge power building, stronger, stronger, and stronger, a force for healing and for good, the highest good of all, where in order for each of us to thrive, we all must thrive. And having this amplifying power of all of us behind you now, tapped into the divine source, again, bring to mind your intention for yourself, what you choose to shift. Just picture it. Just hold it ever so lightly. You know, not like a life raft, like, oh my God, I've got to have this or I'll die. No, hold it lightly. Really with an intention of this God or something better. Kind of like you'd hold a little butterfly that lit in your hand. In wonder, lightly, in joy, in the being very present in the moment. And your mind becomes very soft and unfocused. And ask your inner guidance now to show you the right way in to creating the shift that you desire. And finding the way in, it's not a one practice fits all sort of thing, like just sending light or love. No, this is fine-tuning our skills a bit so that you discern a visualization, a way to picture it, a way to feel this, a way to hear it, a way to think it, perhaps the right words to describe it, or any kind of inner experience that brings this intention to mind in a way that's particularly vivid and real, so that your body, your imagination, and your emotions all feel engaged. As you're doing this, you're changing the energetic DNA of this situation to allow the physical expression to change accordingly. So let your mind just play lightly with this. Don't strain, don't force. Let yourself free associate a bit, just see what comes to you, playing with it very gently, seeing if something just pops into mind that's particularly vivid. It might even be a symbol. It's something that's intense and clear and just feels good. It has a good feeling. Because this is when you know you've found the way in to creating your positive shift. It's as if what you're imagining just clicks into place. And when you've got it, just be with that experience, enjoy it as the lightest, the easiest of daydreams. Don't hold it. Once the vividness starts to fade, at that point just let it go as freely as you'd let a butterfly go from your hand. Just let it go. And don't worry if you've gotten nothing from this. I'll talk about that in a minute. Don't worry about that. A lot of what we do here happens outside of conscious awareness. Staying in the meditation a little longer, picture the White House, the actual building of the White House, and just bring to mind, without naming names or seeing faces, just very theoretically, all the people whose work centers in the White House. Just imagine the many souls. Just see the lights rather than the names and faces. The building, and imagine all the souls whose work centers there. And also picture the U.S. Capitol building and all those souls whose work centers there. Just see all the lights of all the souls. And picture the Supreme Court building and all those whose work centers there. And as you envision the physical reality of these buildings, just imagine the density and the limitation of their physicality, the marble, the stone, the cold stone. Imagine it starting to shift. The molecules, the atoms, the subatomic particles of these buildings are beginning to spread out, vibrating, pulsing in love and light. And imagine the White House, its people and its work. The Capitol building, its people and its work. The Supreme Court building, its people and its work. Now, shifting into a higher vibration of light and love. Souls begin to vibrate at a higher frequency as light surrounds them in the building where they work, where they are right now, where they will be tomorrow, and beyond that. And let go of your own agendas around any of this to allow God's agenda to be fulfilled. And simply hold the intention that fear, anger, greed, and separateness fade into the illusions they are, so that only the highest vibration of love and unity and cooperation and thriving together is left behind. That's all that is left. And let your mind again become soft and unfocused, and ask your inner guidance to show you a bit more about all of this imagery, to show you the right way in to creating this shift. How to vision it, how to hear it, how to feel it, how to think it, so that it feels powerful to you. To most efficiently change all of this for the better. Imagine that we are changing the energetic DNA of these very buildings in a way that they attract only a high love vibration and they repel everything else. Imagine the buildings themselves holding this energy of now attracting only the highest loving vibration, and the work going on within these buildings can only reflect that highest vibration and will repel all else. Let your mind play lightly with this. Don't strain. Let your mind and imagination play. Let yourself free associate. See what comes to you. Something pops in that's particularly vivid and clear. That's when you know you've found the way in to creating this shift. It's as if what you're imagining just clicks into place. This is when your intention becomes laser-like and highly efficient, creating an energetic change. And when you've got it, just be with that experience for a moment. Enjoy it as the lightest, easiest of daydreams. Don't make it hard work. Let it bring a smile to your face. And as the vividness begins to fade, let it go. Let it go. And as I said, if you didn't get anything consciously, trust that things are percolating at an unconscious level. You might want to take this into sleep with you tonight. Before you go to bed, just hold these same intentions for a moment. Easily, gently, don't clutch them. Easy, gently, easy little daydream. And now just gently, just bring your own personal energy, let it start to come back into your body. Because we are, face it, we are physical beings. So come back into your body. Feel your feet planted firmly on the ground beneath you, drawing up lots of grounded power from the earth as you pull down love, kindness, light from above. Imagine that you are just vibrating at the highest level. So now you have become an oscillator, bringing the world around you into harmony with a higher vibration, rather than letting the world suck you down. And take your time coming back. I do want to invite any of you who've gotten anything out of this to please join me live on Wednesday nights at 7 o'clock Eastern Time, every Wednesday virtually. I do a live Zoom event. Healing service is free. Anyone is welcome to attend. And we heal. It's about receiving healing. An hour later at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, I do my weekly Miracles course class. And that's not a Course in Miracles. It's based on my own material of studying and teaching what gives rise to miraculous experience. Similar to what we've done tonight. Many experiments in using our skills and practical spirituality. That is on a donation basis. It's my service, actually. I allow other nonprofits to host it. And money goes directly to them. So that is my service. If you are part of a spiritual community out there that is a 501c3 and would like to host my class, send me a message. I have room for some more groups. So that's me. Check out my book, The Breakthrough Point, and join me live. I'd love to meet you. I'd love to do healing work and spiritual work together with you. Until we meet again, it's been an honor. I love and bless you. Namaste.